What's good, everyone? Evan Jarvis here. Today we are going to be doing another tier list for Heroes of Hold'em. Today we are going to be doing a tier list for the warrior abilities, ranking them from S tier to D tier. So, a little bit of context. This list is mainly for tough tournaments where you're playing against the other regulars, where you're playing against a lot of players who have a lot of abilities, or in the big field tournaments like the Zombie Horde, where there will be a lot of minions and NPCs, but in the end game, you're likely going to be battling against some of the stronger players on the network. And in terms of a little bit of context, qualifications for me, I finished in the top 10 on the season leaderboard before, despite playing a much lighter schedule than the other people in that top 10. I final tabled the Zombie Horde countless times, and I've also got plenty of wins against the toughest players in the game. So, with that kind of in place and kind of know what we're working on, let's rank these warrior abilities for Heroes of Hold'em, become better players, build better heroes, and get better results. So we'll go through things alphabetically and just order them as we go. First, we have Amputate. All opponents receive the bleeding state for 12 hands. This one's going to be a C tier ability for me. Bleeding is decent ability, decent debuff. Hit your opponents for, I think it's 3% health per hand. It's not a crazy amount. 12 hands, it does add up. You're probably taking about close to a third of your opponent's health with that. But the fact that it's one-way damage, there's no leech, and there's no extra benefits like poison has of them not being able to heal, I just don't think it's the greatest debuff in the game, so it's going to be a lower ranking ability. Next up, we have Armor Up. Double the health of a random minion you control. You also gain 25% of that health. This is going to be a B tier ability for me, because it's basically a minion build ability for the warrior. You don't see too many warrior builds that are really based on minions because, well, warriors don't really use minions that much, but they can use them in a very specific way, which is using them to get free health. When we get to Cannibalize over here, you'll see the completion of the combo that I'm talking about. But doubling the health of a random minion you control and gaining 25% of that health is pretty powerful if you've chosen your minions correctly. If you had 8 points and you had 4 liches that start with 60% health, doubling that to a starting stack and then getting a quarter of that isn't really going to help you all that much. But if you had 8 points and you had, say, a Diamond Dragon with 400% starting health, and you double that to 800% starting health and get a quarter of that, which would be 2 starting stacks, now you're starting to see how this could be a pretty powerful ability. And that's just the first half of the combo with Armor Up. Next, we have Axe Fling, which is when winning at Showdown, losing opponent takes an additional 25% of the pot in damage, which goes to you. This one's solid. I'm gonna throw this one in the B tier. Being able to inflict extra damage after Showdown is really powerful because players who just have a little bit of health left, you can take them out of the game. You know, you kind of think of the warrior kind of sniping with the axe and getting the KO. Or if they use a healing potion to get 25% of their health back, or a smoke bomb to get 20% of the pot back, you hit them with the Axe Fling, you might basically nullify that healing effect and take them out of the game. So because it has the ability to hit the fatality, it's going to be a B tier ability. Next, we have Battle Roar. Force everyone still in the hand to put an additional 2 big blinds in. The catch with this is that you have to be in the big blind. So I'm going to put this in the C tier. Forcing opponents to put more chips in the pot is obviously very beneficial and very powerful. But in a situation where players have already volunteered to put money in the pot, they probably don't mind putting more money into the pot. And we can only cast this when we're in the big blind. So that's going to be a situation where everyone else has voluntarily put money in the pot before we force them to put in more. Unlike abilities like Whirlwind, where they have not voluntarily put money in where we force them to. So it's going to be a C, and you'll see later why Whirlwind is just much, much better. Next, we have Berserk. Pay 25% of the pot into the pot. Then all opponents still in the hand must pay 15% of the pot into the pot. That's a lot of pot into the pot. I'm going to throw Berserk in the D tier just because the amounts aren't that significant, you know? We have to pay more than our opponents have to pay. They put in less than we do. Granted, we're forcing them to, but it's going to be another situation like Battle Cry where These players voluntarily got to that point in the hand, and to tax them another 15% just isn't going to do that much damage to them. Okay, now we get to one of the fun ones, Cannibalize. Kill all your minions, 50% of their health goes to you. It's going to be a B tier ability because of the fact it's purely for a minion-based build. But remember that combo we were talking about? Get a Diamond Dragon, starts with 400% health. Cast Armor Up, get it to 800% health. And then Cannibalize it. Kill it and get 50% of its health. So if you didn't Armor Up and you use this spell, you'd be getting 200% health from a 400% starting dragon. But if you use Armor Up first, you double it to 800 and get a quarter of that, which is 200%. And then you slay it and get another 400%. So you can basically, with this combo, use these two abilities in the first 2 turns to get 600% extra health, an extra 6 starting stacks just by sacrificing one of your minions. So if you're willing to sacrifice ability slots and not have them late game, you can gain a lot of health early game and get a big advantage. The one thing about this is you do need to have a minion that's at least 7 points, ideally 8, because you want to have, 300%, 400% health. And to do that, your hero is going to have at least 4 or 5 points, and then you add in a stables, or you can get the rare orc or dark elf wizard or vampire wizard that are going to have high enough minion points to be able to get that diamond dragon. You don't want to use these with weaker minions, but with stronger minions, it's a pretty nice way to start the game. Okay, next we have Charge, which is straddle for free. Any opponent folding preflop gains bleeding debuff for a cycle. If you've watched my tier ranking videos before, you know how I feel about free chips and free straddles. Charge is going to be an S tier ability simply for the fact that it has the free straddle. And then you add on the fact that they get a debuff if they fold. It's not a huge debuff. Again, I think that bleeding is one of the weakest debuffs of all the debuffs. But, you're still hitting your opponents for 3% health or whatever every hand for 6 hands. It's a nice little bit of extra damage that we get. But the main value for Charge is the free straddle and the fact that no matter how big the blinds get, you still get 2 free big blinds when you use this. Extremely useful ability. Save it for as long as you can, because the later in game you use it, the more valuable it is, the larger those chips are going to be. Next we have Cleave. Force adjacent players still in hand to pay the last raise amount again into the pot. This one's going to go into D. This one, I think it's putting in more chips than Berserk, but it's only the players next to you, I guess, adjacent players. And I mean, it's not bad. The only thing about it is they've already voluntarily put the money in the pot. I could see this combining with Whirlwind, maybe, to force them to put in like 6 big blinds. There are a few things that combo with Whirlwind, and one of them would be Cleave. So maybe when used in conjunction, this could make its way up to C tier. I haven't tried to pull off this combo because it is a little complicated, but I guess if you're playing like 3-handed, that could be pretty powerful. You hit the Whirlwind, force them to pay 3 big blinds, then you force them to pay 3 more, 6 big blinds. It can be useful for maybe kind of trying to force an end game situation. You know what? I'm going to swap it with Battle Roar. I'm going to put Battle Roar in the D, and I'm going to put Cleave in the C. All right, Crush. Destroy target minion with less health than you. Heal for 60% of that minion's health pool. This is going to be a B tier ability. It again goes with the minion-based build, or the mess with the minions build, especially if combined with Armor Up and Cannibalize. You can already have a massive chip lead on the field, and then you can use this to just destroy a minion and take 60% of its health. So if you kind of want to just ransack your way through the field and just slay minions and just take all their health and not even have to play any pots but still cruise to the final table, this combination we're starting to see in the B tier are the spells that would make it happen. One thing that's really nice about Crush is it's one of the few minion targeting spells that can target a dragon, which means kind of all minions are fair game, and you're not limited to only the non-dragon minions. So despite the fact it's only a rare ability, it's pretty good if you're looking to really dominate in the early game. Next we have Drinking Buddies. If adjacent opponent wins this hand, leech 40% of the pot. Instant S tier ability. Leeching 40% is massive. You're taking almost half the pot. You're getting free chips in a pot that you didn't have to play. it's just great. It really is just great. The only downside to drinking buddies is it has to be an opponent who's beside you. So if someone across the table wins the pot, you can't activate this. But, you know, 40% of your opponents are sitting next to you. And if you're playing more short-handed, being 5-handed, 4-handed, 3-handed, it's even more true. And if you still have this ability when you're 3-handed, you can use it on every pot because your opponents are always adjacent to you. But just the fact that you get 40% of the pot and you take it away from the person who won it, extremely powerful. Anytime you can get free chips without having to enter a pot, that's just a super useful skill to have. So Drinking Buddies definitely S tier. I put this on every single build that I have with Warriors. All right, Execute. Winning showdown, eliminate target minion with less health than you, gain 45% of its health. I originally thought this was a C tier ability, but now that I've used it in game, I know that it is actually a B tier ability. Goes with the minion based strat. You can see all these pictures are pretty similar. I originally thought that you had to execute the minion that you won the pot against. So it's like, okay, I got to play a small pot with this minion, make sure it maintains most of its health pool so I can steal 45% of it at showdown. What I later found out is the way this ability works is when you win a showdown against a minion, whether it's an all-in or a limped pot that's checked down or whatever, you just get to pick another minion on the table and execute it. So again, this one's very much like Crush. Difference being that Execute you have to win on the showdown, whereas Crush you can just use it on the flop. And Execute you get 45% of their health pool. Crush you get 60% of their health pool. I almost feel like Crush is actually kind of better than Execute, because Crush also has one fun thing where you can be heads up in a pot with a minion, and if they have less health than you can just use Crush to eliminate that minion, take a bunch of its health, plus they fold and surrender you the pot. So, you know, I think Crush is slightly better than Execute, but they're both great, you know, minion messing with based build abilities. And I love that with Execute, you can just pick any minion you want. And if you're holding the chip lead, which you often will if you're going with this early game strategy, every minion's fair game, and you can really mess up other heroes' hopes and dreams by taking out their very strong minions, because they're kind of always at risk. All right, next we have Flesh Wound. All opponents receive the bleeding debuff for 9 hands. This is going to be a C tier ability, very much like Amputate. You just giving people bleeding, and they're gonna lose some health, and that is what it is. Fully Armored. When losing at showdown, heal for 35% of the pot, which is brittle. This is going to be an S tier ability because it is a healing ability. If you lose the pot, you get 35% of the pot, which is, you know, if you lose a heads up pot, you both put in 100 chips, there's 200 out there, you get about 70 back. So you're losing a third of your chips. If you lose in a 3-way all in, you're actually breaking even on that pot, because a third of it is, you know, your contribution. And if you happen to be in a 4 or a 5-way pot, then casting Fully Armored enables you to actually chip up, which is, again, something that may be used in combination with Whirlwind, which we'll get to later. But yeah, healing spells, always great. The only thing about it is you don't want to go crazy in heads up situations, because you will end up with net less chips than you started the hand with if you lose that pot. But it's a great way to stay in the game and make opponents less excited to call your all-ins. Next we have Golden Goblin Sapper. End of hand Sapper explodes, dealing 10% of opponent's health in damage. Winning the hand, reactivate random non-Sapper exhausted ability. This one I am going to put into... man, it's close, because usually with the Goblin Sappers, I'm not a huge fan of them. But the fact that this one gets you an ability back, I think I might actually put it in B tier. Getting abilities back is one of the most useful things in the game. And also it guarantees that you get an ability back that is not this ability. So if, you know, the rest of your abilities are stacked, you can use the Sapper in a spot where you think you're pretty likely to win the hand, and get one of the other abilities back, which could be Drinking Buddies, right? Could be Charge. Could be some of the other awesome ones we're about to go through later. So for that reason, I think it's one of the Sapper's abilities that ranks a little bit higher than the others. But speaking of things that rank high. Intimidating Shout. All opponents discard 1 random card. Thieves discard both. S tier. Not even close. The most threatening spell for an all-in situation is going to be Intimidating Shout. One of my favorite clips, maybe you saw it on YouTube, is me being all in with pocket tens against pocket aces. Flop coming king, king, king. I cast Intimidating Shout. He loses an ace and does not draw, you know, the case king or one of the other two aces, and we win the pot. So Intimidating Shout is extremely powerful because not only do your opponents lose one of their cards, you kind of cut their hand in half, you keep your cards. So it's just great. And if you're up against a thief, they lose both cards and just get two random ones. Same as if it would have been like Time of Uncertainty. So extremely powerful ability, really helpful for winning those critical all-ins that, you know, you find yourself all in and behind in. If someone has a made flush, this will usually break it up. Made straight, this will usually break it up. Over pair, pocket pair, it's going to break it up. The time to not use this is if your opponent has two pair and you don't have a pair. Well, breaking them down to one pair is not going to make any difference. And when they have a draw, that's when it's kind of up to you if you want to just try to fade the draw or you want to try to break up their hand. I also really like that Intimidating Shout is cast on the turn where you have, you know, most of the hand revealed. You only have one card to come, and you can make an executive decision whether or not you need to use it in that instance or you want to save it for a better one. One of the Warrior's best abilities is Intimidating Shout. Pretty much makes it on every build that I have, whether I'm going mess with the minions early game or pure heal and power late game. Okay, next we have Isolate. If only one raise ahead of you, raise pot and force original raiser to call and all other opponents to fold. This one's going to be D tier. I do like that you can force an opponent to put more chips in. Usually if someone's raised, they're not going to mind calling an additional raise. And if a minion's raised, they'll usually just call your re-raise anyway. You don't need to use an ability to make that happen. And if you're in the late game, yeah, it can force someone to end up in an all-in situation, but usually they're going to be willing to go all in anyway. So it is a good ability, forcing other opponents to put in more chips, but we see that many of the Warriors' abilities are about forcing your opponents to put additional chips into the pot. And I think there are better ones than Isolate. Because usually when someone's already put in chips, they're not going to be that upset. If they've put in chips voluntarily, they're not going to be that upset about putting in more. All right, Lift Curse. Remove all debuffs from yourself and minions you control. Wait for it. Apply them to everyone else at your table. S tier. The best anti-debuff ability in the game. Because not only do you take all the hex and all the poison and all the bleeding and all the burning and get rid of it, you then apply it to everyone else, and now it's working for you. So if someone hexed you, and you know they were getting leech off you, now you've hexed the rest of the table, and you're leeching off them. So while Warriors don't have any, you know, really strong debuffs they can cast, all they have is bleeding. Well, in a way, they can cast all the debuffs, because whoever they're playing against, they kind of become a mirror and put that back onto everyone else. So Lift Curse, just unbelievably useful ability. And often players may have cleansed the debuffs that were put on them when other people cast Mass Hex or, you know, Mass Inferno, whatever. And they will have already used their cleansed debuffs. And then if you hit them with this, they get hit with the debuff again and they won't have the spell to cleanse it. So really, really useful skill, Lift Curse. I think this was like the most expensive ability on the marketplace for a long time. Might still be. It's just off the charts. It really is. And it makes sense because the Warrior doesn't have many magic abilities. This is its way it can debuff and really spell. All right, Live or Die. Receive an additional 40% of the pot in health when winning Showdown All In. This is pretty good. I mean, it is going to give some free chips. I think we can throw this into A tier because of the fact that you can choose when you use it. You can wait till you win a really big pot and then say, I'd like 40% more on top of it. It's basically like having Midas Crown on every hand. You can get an extra 40% of the pot even if you just win with a pair. So Live or Die, very strong. You just need to wait for the right opportunity to use it. Don't use it early, but it can get you a ton of extra chips. And if you're already playing big stack, big pot poker, it's just going to make the pots even more monstrous when you do decide to use it. All right, next we have Mercenary Contract. If you raised in this hand previously, win 45% of the pot when you lose. I'm putting this as S tier because it is a survival ability, like Fully Armored, like Drinking Buddies. I don't think it's quite as good as the other tier, So, you know, maybe it's like S minus or A plus for a couple of reasons. One is that you have to cast it on the flop. So you don't have as much information as you would with, say, like Intimidating Shout. You're not as certain as to whether or not you're going to win the hand, so you kind of have to use it in the dark. And if you win the hand, the contract is used for no good reason, right? Whereas with Drinking Buddies and Fully Armored, you wait till the river. You wait till you know the outcome to decide if you want to heal on that pot or not. But because we have Whirlwind coming up, which forces opponents to put a bunch of chips into the pot, combining that with Mercenary Contract can be very useful. We have these spells that force or these abilities that force our opponents to commit a lot of chips. Sometimes we get forced to commit some chips with some mediocre hands as well. And we may be up against hands that have 30%, 40% chance to win. So guaranteeing that in the worst case, we get our health back, and in the best case, we stack the player, it's nice to have this as kind of a backup plan. So I usually have this on my warriors. I don't really see the downside in having it. It's a really good insurance policy. Next we have Might Makes Right. Take control of the button for 3 hands. Gain 40% extra health from pots 1 during this time. So this is A tier, and you know, if we're comparing it with Live or Die, this is definitely better than Live or Die. Like this is going to be A plus, and Live or Die is going to be A minus kind of thing. You know, honestly, I might even do this. You know, because there's a big difference. But Crush is a very specific situation, but it's good for early games. So I'm gonna stick with the original way I had it listed, but you see what I'm saying? It's very close. Might is Right is great because you get that same 40% health bonus on every pot you win, plus you keep the button for 3 hands. The difference is Live or Die, you wait till you know you've won the pot, and then you say, give me the 40% bonus. Might Makes Right says you get 40% bonus if you win these pots, but you gotta win them. I really like to use Might Makes Right on the final table. If I'm playing 3-handed, I wait till the blinds get really big, cast Might Makes Right, and for the next 3 hands, small blind and the big blind have to pay them every single time. It's just really great. The other time I might consider using Might Makes Right is if I know I'm about to be on like the literal bubble and the blinds are getting pretty significant and I can't really afford them. Well, if I cast Might Makes Right, I know that for the next 3 hands, I'm not going to have to pay those blinds and I might be able to sneak into the money. So it's kind of like the Warriors version of Shelter in that you're not paying blinds, you're only paying antes, and then there is that extra bonus of you win extra health if you win the pots, the same way that with Shelter, you get health just by being at the table. So Might Makes Right, pretty powerful, usually makes it onto my my main builds. A tier for sure. Minion Brawl. Make a min raise and force all minions at the table to call. Minions not all in fold. Okay, this is going to be a D tier ability. First off, we need to be at a table that's got a bunch of minions. Then all the minions call a min raise and then they fold. Great, so we get some free chips, but if all the minions are still in the mix, it's probably going to be early game. Blinds are going to be pretty small. The size of the pot that we're going to win with this ability is going to be pretty small. And I'm not interested in abilities that only win me small pots when they work. Mortal Blow. Any minion with less than 50% of your health post-flop that doesn't win is eliminated. 50% of their health goes to you. I don't know if this requires them to see the flop or if they're just sitting out. Like if they don't see the flop, if you automatically get the health, because I haven't used this ability. If it's the latter, I would probably put it as C tier, because if you have them covered, you basically just get to eliminate all the minions at the table. If, however, they have to go post flop with you and then not win, that's going to be fewer minions you get to target. So in that case, I would put it in D tier. Since I'm not sure, I'm going to throw it in D tier, but with the caveat being if it includes minions that do not even see the flop and they get eliminated, if they have less than 50% of your health, that would be a pretty good way to slay the entire table, and that would kind of get it into that B tier category almost. But since I'm not 100% on it, you know, we'll do this because 12 hands is better than 9 hands, and this feels like it's a little bit better than the other ones. Okay, Revenge. When losing a showdown, winning player takes 35% of the pot in damage, gets heavy bleeding for 6 hands. Now, heavy bleeding is twice the effect of bleeding, so it's 6% damage per hand, if I'm not mistaken. And 6 hands, like, that's pretty significant. That's going to be about 30% of their health pool gone. So to take away 35% of the pot and damage, and usually you're going to use this in all-in situations, and another 30, it really puts a damper on how good it felt to win that pot. So I'm going to put this in C. In an earlier patch, the caster also got that health, which immediately made it S tier, but it was way too powerful. So they fixed it where now it is the heavy bleeding for 6 hands. And I think that's a good kind of middle ground for this ability, that it's a defensive ability. It's kind of a counter ability. It's not gaining you health, but it's making players, again, less incentivized to play pots with you, because when they do play pots with you, even if they win, bad things can happen. All right, next we have Severed Limb, which is one of the newest abilities in the game. If you are the lowest health on the table, chop off your arm and swing it, dealing 4% damage that cannot be blocked to everyone, and heal for that amount. So we'll say that on average you heal for about 20%, but it's going to be more because you're going to be a short stack and they're going to be bigger stacks. So maybe you're healing for 30, maybe 40, maybe 50. I don't know. You're leeching some health. It's basically like kind of a super straddle. I'm going to put this in C tier. It requires you to be under the gun, and it requires you to be the shortest stack. So it's not going to come up that often. And the size of the heal can be good, but you really want to be significantly short stacked to get the biggest benefit from using it. And then you're using an ability where one of the conditions is you need to be short stacked. We don't generally want to focus our builds on abilities that require us to be doing poorly in the event, since especially if you see everything with the warrior so far, warrior generally is focused on having a big stack, not a short stack. Next we have Shield Bash. When winning showdown, deal 25% of the pot in damage to target losing opponent. I'm going to put this in C tier as well. It's nice to be able to do an extra 25% of the pot in damage. That can be kind of the same as Mortal Blow, which we talked about earlier. Axe Fling. Yeah, similar to Axe Fling. The difference with this one and Axe Fling is Axe Fling you heal for the 25% of the pot damage that you're dealing, whereas Shield Bash you're just doing that damage. If this allowed you to target anyone at the table, it would be even better, but I think it makes more sense that you could only use it against players you're in the pot with, because if you actually visualize, the warrior in a pot with someone battling, that after they win the hand they might bash them with the shield. They're not going to go bash someone who's hiding off in the bushes, right? So C tier ability, similar to Axe Fling. Axe Fling slightly better, but if I only had Shield Bash and I couldn't use Axe Fling, it's a fine ability, especially for countering those healing potions. Next we have Shield Slam. Make a minimum raise for free and block all further raises for the rest of the hand. This one's going to be an A tier ability because it's basically a free straddle. Minimum raise going to be 2x raise, and it's for free, doesn't cost you health. So it's similar to Charge, except it doesn't have the bleeding debuff for when people fold. It does have block all further raises for the rest of the hand, which kind of means you're like guaranteed to see the flop with this, at least, which in some ways makes it better than Charge, but I don't think it blocks betting on later streets. So it might prevent raising, but it doesn't block betting. So if you're really trying to like combo this, I guess you would cast it pre-flop, and then you could use min bets to freeze your opponents post-flop. Really make a block bet as effective as possible. But in essence, it's mainly a free straddle. So that's going to be A tier. Free chips are always going to be A tier. And it's pretty good for a rare ability. Next we have Strong Arm. Instantly win the pot if it is less than or equal to 6 blinds if no one is all in. I'm going to put this in A tier because, I mean, late game, being able to pick up something that's 6 blinds is pretty strong. If someone casts Cut Purse, then Strong Arm would enable you to take the pot. I think if someone casts Tithe, because of the antes, you won't be able to activate Strong Arm, but otherwise you would. But this is really good if someone's making a min raise at high blinds or a 3x raise at high blinds, because you just get to steal the pot right away. It's a guaranteed win, no showdown. It's actually kind of like a Tithe. It's kind of like a Cut Purse. You just need the condition that the pot is not already 6 big blinds and no one else is all in. But yeah, pretty powerful if you can pull it off. Next, we have Threat of Violence. Force all players still in the hand to put an additional 3 big blinds into the pot. And this is like Battle Roar, but way better. Because Threat of Violence can be used from any position. and it's for 3 big blinds. You know, battle cry, battle roar, whatever was 2 blinds. This is 3. So again, if the players have voluntarily put money in the pot, then forcing an extra 3 big blinds, not the end of the world. But when we combine this with the next ability, Whirlwind, which I'm going to discuss. Actually, it's going to be the last ability. You'll see that it is an insane combination, especially for ending the game quickly. So I'm going to quickly cover Warpath. When on a win streak of 2 hands, receive an extra 50% of the pot in health for each hand continuing the win streak. And I kind of want to put this in C tier, which means I need to put something in D tier. And I guess if I had to pick one of these to bump down to D tier, it's probably going to be Amputate, man. It's probably going to be Amputate because I just don't think that debuff is all that deadly. So Warpath, when on a win streak of 2 hands, receive an extra 50% of the pot in health for each hand continuing the win streak. This one is great that you're getting an extra 50% of the pot. It's really good if you're just kind of running over the table. It's really good if you're on the bubble. You're just going to be able to generate more chips. This is something that you can combine with Might Makes Right to get 90% bonus. It's really best used on the bubble in a spot where you know people are not going to be calling all-ins, not going to be calling raises because they just want to wait for other players to get eliminated. And now when you're stealing the blinds, you're getting an extra 50%. So if you steal whatever blind ante, and I think yours is probably going to count there too, 2.5 blinds, you get an extra 1.25 blinds, which may not sound like a lot. When you're late game in these tournaments and the blinds are massive and average stack is 5 big blinds, an extra big blind is huge. And the fact that you can continue to get that hand over hand over hand until you lose one, pretty significant. The hard part is you need to win the 2 hands first, but if you're playing on the bubble, it's going to be something you'll be able to pull off, and nice combination. Speaking of nice combinations, we have the final ability, Whirlwind. Pre-flop and under the gun. Raise 3x. All opponents call. I call this basically the end game ability because when stacks are fairly short, people are waiting each other out. Maybe you're on the bubble. They're not often going to have 3 big blinds. And even if they do, they're only going to have 4 or 5. They're going to be extremely short. They're probably not going to have 6. So if you start a hand off by casting Whirlwind, everyone has to put in 3 blinds. You follow that up with Threat of Violence. Everyone out, force all players still in the hand to put an additional 3 big blinds in. You've put 6 big blinds into the pot. And now you're going to have, you know, most of your opponents all in. It's a great way to just burst the bubble because even if you have players who are going to change the board or try to change the cards, everyone's just got random hands anyway. And someone's got to win the pot, which means most of the other players are going to lose and you're going to get a lot of eliminations. So these used in combination are extremely, extremely good for popping the bubble. And if you're concerned that, well, what if I Whirlwind and I lose? Well, that's what Mercenary Contract, Fully Armored, and Drinking Buddies are for. If you use Whirlwind and Threat of Violence to force a massive pot, you have these 3 abilities that can allow you to recover some of your health. So if everyone on the table has whatever 6 big blinds or less, you force everyone to be all in. And yeah, you force everyone to be all in, and then you will cast a healing spell so that you get some of the pot back, and then you could just be heads up. You force everyone else to use their heals. You basically put people in a world of hurt, and that's what the warrior likes to do. It likes to mess with people's minions, and it likes to mess with their heroes. And this is kind of the ultimate combination. Whirlwind plus Threat of Violence with a little backup plan of having Drinking Buddies, Fully Armored, or Mercenary Contract behind. Or if you happen to win the pot, you could always cast Live or Die and get even more. So that is kind of the ultimate combination for a warrior. That is the coup de grace. The one thing to be aware of is that if you do not have 3 times the big blind, you cannot cast Whirlwind because you have to have the 3 big blinds to raise, unlike the free straddle spells, which you get to use them for free. So you do need to keep an eye on the blinds. You need to keep an eye on the blind increase and make sure that if you're planning to cast this, that you do have enough chips to be able to use it. Because if you have 3 blinds, but the blinds go up and you have 2.5 blinds when you happen to be under the gun, sorry, sir, no dice. You will not be able to activate that ability. But when you pull it off, it is very fun and it makes for very entertaining. Anyway, that's going to wrap up this tier list for Heroes of Hold'em. We went through the warrior abilities for Heroes of Hold'em. Please let me know what you think in the comments. If you have any disagreements on these tier lists, you think that other abilities deserve to be higher or other ones should be lower, let me know in the comments what you think and why, because I'd love to learn from you just as much as I'm sure you enjoyed learning from me. Hopefully this video helped you level up your understanding of the warrior class, helps you build better warriors, get more caches, and ultimately get more wins. Thanks so much for watching. This has been Evan Jarvis for Heroes of Hold'em. Till next time, you know what to do. Take what you learned, go out there, and get stacking.